Well, top of the afternoon to you. Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for September the 29th, 2025. We're almost through the month of September, and we are spiraling, falling on a collision course with October here in a couple days. October, of course, is the wonderful month where we celebrate not just, we encounter not just Halloween, but also Reformation Day. Lots of everybody's singing Martin Luther and A Mighty Fortress is Our God, and that's kind of October. It's a busy month. Pastor Dave, you're looking sharp in your shirt over there, man. You're getting pretty stylish.
Plaid today. What do you think?
You pulled it off. I saw it yesterday, too. Is that the same shirt from yesterday? Or did you pull a different one?
Same shirt.
No coat, though. Yeah, well, a little dress down. How's it going over there?
Good, man. We just had some leftover turkey wraps from the bridge.
How'd that go down?
I'm feeling pretty energized.
Okay. Did you shave off some excess body hair yesterday in honor of Isaiah 7:20, or what?
Every day
do a little
I do
shaving
that.
of your beard.
That was an interesting text, wasn't it?
Yeah. Thankfully, you didn't read it in the other versions. You kind of went with the tame ESV, made it G-rated. So
here's the thing. I guess we're going there. In Isaiah 7, there's an image used of the king of Assyria as if he's like a razor that God's going to wield to shave off extra stubble from a person's hair. And in chapter 7, verses 20, 21, that area, he says, shave off the hair from your feet. And typically in the Hebrew language, feet is, just as in any culture, any language, there's always euphemisms. So things like toileting or private parts get a euphemism. And feet was the euphemism in the Hebrew culture for the private area. So it's possible that is referring to hair on a certain part of your body that I wasn't ready to read in the middle of a church service on a Sunday morning. But that's what the prophet said. Rather provocative, wouldn't you say?
I think that was pretty provocative, and this should cue up the theme music right now. Anyway, it was a wonderful sermon, Pastor Dave. Glad that you brought that up.
Let's need some explanation. Hold on, we're just going to go there. So, here's the thing about the feet. So, like, a man in the Hebrew culture would wear a tunic and a cloak, right? And so when he would have to go to the restroom or relieve himself, he would disrobe, and the robe would be bundled up and gathered around his feet. So to go to the restroom, it was colloquially called covering your feet. And that's what everybody knew what it meant. Like, go to the John, whatever, that was cover your feet.
Did this include the public restrooms at the time, or just the home restroom?
Any place. So Saul famously in a cave is covering his feet, and David goes in there, finds him, cuts off a piece of his robe. He is probably going to the bathroom. So that is a euphemism that the Hebrew culture uses. So when you see the word feet in the Old Testament, you got to go, is this feet, or what exactly are they talking about? Sometimes it's feet, sometimes it's not feet.
Those prophets back in the day knew how to get your attention, I must say. If you read through the prophets, they comment on a lot of issues, and they use some language to get your attention, such as Isaiah 7 and Ezekiel 16 and other places.
So if you're looking for a new and creative way to tell someone that you are utilizing the restroom, try, I need to go cover my feet.
This is true. This is, hey, Tim, I got to go cover my feet. I'll see you later.
Right. It's shocking language. It's meant to be shocking language because sometimes the Hebrew prophets have to talk about some important stuff. And
gotta get your attention.
It's meant to be shocking on purpose.
Yeah. That's good. Well, we'll talk more about that as we get later into our show today. For now, let's talk about our first sponsor of our episode. The highlighting sponsor is Trunk or Treats. They have been sponsoring our show for quite some time now. We are looking right now for event and candy donations. So if you are looking to donate candy, if you want to serve, you can scan that QR code that is just screaming at you from your screen right there. That event is going to be October the 18th, 3 to 5 p.m. And Trunk or Treat is a big fan of Behind the Pulpit and October, as we're spiraling towards October in our event today. So go check out Trunk or Treat. You won't be disappointed.
Trunk or Treat loves Behind the Pulpit.
It does. They do. All right. Well, speaking of October, as we end September, we've had lots of things that have happened, both crazy things, sad things. September's been a rather eventful month, especially the second half. So let's dive into our world-famous segment, In the News. All right, so Pastor Dave, I'm not really sure where to begin here. We've had assassinations that we've been covering the last couple weeks. We've had some Christian leaders who have passed away suddenly. How about we start at the top with another shocking thing that came across my newsfeed yesterday. There was another attack on a house of worship over in Michigan. It was a Mormon. Did the Mormons call it did they call it a church? I forget. What do they call it? The Mormon temple over there in Michigan, and 10 people were injured from gunshot wounds. I think 4 people died, I heard this morning. And this began or ended, I forget what the order was here, with the attacker driving his car into the temple and causing the temple to go up in flames on fire. I'm sure traumatizing everybody that was there, as well as causing the loss of life. I think what I heard this morning is the guy was a armed service veteran of some kind. But this is a very tragic event, and seems to be things that we're hearing more and more about. Earlier in the month, we had an attacker shooting a kids service at a Catholic church. It sort of makes you ask, what's next? Did you happen to catch this, Pastor Dave, on your newsfeed yesterday?
Very disturbing story, and I think at least 4 people have tragically passed away, and a bunch of other people are wounded. But because there was a fire, there was some more, I think, investigation that needed to happen. I haven't really looked at the news this morning, but devastating story, and certainly our hearts and prayers go out to the families who are experiencing tremendous loss as a result of
indeed
going to Sunday worship.
So this was... this was not good at all. Not good at all. I'm looking at one here from June. Was there another one that happened in June? I must put the wrong one in here. I got to put September. Man, what are we to make of these things that are happening? Some people are saying, and I think even from the administration is saying, there's specific attacks that are coming against Christianity. All right, so here's the headline. There was a mass shooting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan on Sunday, September the 28th. At least 4 people were killed. 8 more were wounded. It was a 40-year-old attacker. He drove his vehicle into church during the services and then got out, I guess Terminator style, and started firing at people with an assault rifle, and then set the building on fire. I mean, this is like just unmanageable. Can you imagine somebody driving their car into our church worship service on a Sunday morning and then coming out with a semi-automatic rifle and just starting to shoot? And this is what happened here. It's crazy.
I mean, it's absolutely horrific story, and we're still waiting for more information to come out about the news story. I have noticed that people they rush to judgment, and they kind of want to make a headline or say something sometimes before the facts come out. Yeah. So I've been kind of waiting to see what's going on here with the motive and what was wrong, but it certainly seems like a very troubled person who would commit such a violent act.
Yeah, did he have some kind of connection with that particular ward, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't there a ward in the Mormon church? I think they call the section ward.
Perhaps.
Ward something.
Not familiar with that terminology.
Ward.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, so that happened yesterday. Our prayers are with all those who are affected, and we're just going to pray for God's protection over all houses of worship and pray that this would come to an end.
Lord, have mercy.
The second news story, another sad one. Suddenly, this past week, a well-known pastor, Voddie Baucham, passed away. And I imagine some of you may know who he is. Some of you might not know who he is. I actually was talking with a speaker rep who represents him, and we were considering inviting him to come be part of our Contend conference in 2027, our apologetics conference, and then I got the news this week that he passed away. So unfortunately, Voddie won't be coming. But Voddie Baucham, personally, I had a great admiration for him. Read a number of his books. Recently, he had a couple books that in the evangelical world would have been considered controversial. He wrote a book called Fault Lines, which was talking about the infiltration of critical theory, critical race theory, things like that have come into the evangelical church, and how that was dividing the church over race. Voddie was a African American man. He also wrote a book called "It's Not Like Being Black," criticizing the LGBT movement, and so he wasn't gun shy about cultural issues. He would often talk about how the culture shouldn't be dictating our theology, but it is Scripture itself that should be dictating our theology. He was the president of a new seminary down in Florida. He just came back from Africa, where he was the dean over at African Christian University in Zambia, and well known in the SBC from Texas. He was an apologetic speaker with Stand to Reason back in the day. That's where I first came into contact with him. I heard him speak back in my seminary days, and he was quite a powerful speaker and knew how to bring the gospel. And it's a big loss this week to hear that Voddie passed away. What was your connection with Voddie? You were familiar with him, right?
I got introduced to him back in 2006. He wrote a book called Family Driven Faith. Back then, it was really popular to name things like driven, like the purpose-driven life or the gospel-driven culture or whatever. He wrote family-driven faith. So his
things were driven before they were centered, right?
Yeah. So he was very influential in terms of the family worship movement and
homeschooling movement.
Yes. Yeah. He was a big proponent of removing our children from the public school. I think he has a famous quote, something like, we should not be surprised if we send our kids over to
Rome,
the
Caesar,
and
turn our kids over to Caesar, and not be surprised if they come back Romans.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So certainly a titan of the faith. He could proclaim the gospel and thunder away from the pulpit. He's more popular in the kind of circles that were like Shepherd's Conference, John MacArthur, those type of evangelicals.
Yeah.
Great minister of God. We lost a titan of the faith very young. I think it was 56.
56.
I know he had some cardiovascular issues a couple of years ago. Maybe it's related to that, but they didn't really clarify, right?
They just said it was an emergency medical incident, but they didn't say the specifics.
Yeah. So after Fault Lines in 2021, I think he published that book. He started recognizing that there was a new critique. So after kind of the woke movement sort of started and picked up a lot of steam in the late 2010s. So 2016, 17, 18, 19.
Now, he would say he was critiquing it before it happened, but it became full-blown in 2018, 19, yeah.
Okay. So, he wrote that book, and then it became a little bit more commonplace to offer a critique towards critical theory, critical race theory, queer theory, these types of Marxist categories. And as soon as it became a little bit more commonplace to critique the movement, a new critique came out, basically labeling most of the material that critiques that movement as Christian nationalism. And so he actually said in 2021 he first heard that term and he had to go look it up. Like, what are they talking about? Why are they calling me this? Right? And so, I think Voddie was pretty wise, and he realized right away that what that term was, that new term that was being popularized, Christian nationalism, was a boogeyman. It was a term basically to shut down any sort of critique, and especially the term white Christian nationalism. So if you have the categories of oppressed and oppressor, and you realize that Christians are going to oppress non-Christians, men are going to oppress women, and documented immigrants are going to oppress undocumented immigrants. So there's always these two categories, right? And Voddie said, if you say the three things together, white Christian nationalism, that's like a triple word score in Scrabble. Like you get to pull the ultimate, trump card there. And so that became like a slur. Oh, you're just a white Christian nationalist. And Voddie's like, I'm black, first of all. And he would always say, what do you mean? Like, define terms. What do you mean by Christian nationalism? And then oftentimes people can't define that. They just throw it out there like, you're a Christian nationalist. Mm-hmm. And if it's anything like, I want my Christianity to influence the government, Voddie's like, I'm all in. Yeah, I guess, according to you, so I'm a Christian nationalist. Now what? Actually, in Zambia is a Christian nation. So, if you read the governing constitutional documents, he's like, this is a Christian nation. It's black. So what are you saying about us? How exactly are we oppressing anyone? Who are we oppressing? Tell us what we're doing wrong, right? And so he was pretty at the forefront of recognizing that pejorative slur right away. I think we need to talk a little bit more about that lately because that term's being thrown around in ways that need some definitions. Some people use that, and really what they're critiquing is any Christian influence at all as a problem, and I think that's inherently problematic to use it that way. So
we've been talking about maybe doing an underground podcast episode on the Christian nationalism topic.
Yeah, let's define some terms.
Let's do it. Make it happen.
But rest in peace, Voddie. I haven't heard anything about a funeral service, but I'm sure that'll be coming up soon. And
indeed,
we lost a giant of the faith.
We did. Well, speaking of Africa, do we want to go here now? The Nigeria comments. So, if you've not been following the news over the last number of years, there is a terrorist group in Nigeria called Boko Haram, and they've been going around attacking Christians. And I think I heard the stat of it's been close to 100,000 Christians that have been killed by this terrorist group. And even the liberal comic Bill Maher was commenting on this on one of his last shows, saying nobody's covering this, and this is a bit of a problem. This is a genocide that's going on over there. And we need to be praying for our brothers and sisters and also maybe raising the alarm on this.
Mm-hmm. Certain parts of Nigeria are safe. Other parts are very dangerous, especially the middle belt and the northern regions. And Christians are being attacked left and right, sometimes right in the middle of worship. Large numbers of deaths. I think in 2025, I heard the number was like 7,000 so far that have been killed. And there's not just murders, there's also abductions, there's all kinds of things that are happening that are atrocities in Nigeria. And we certainly need to be aware of that, be prayerful about that, but also think about resourcing them as well. Because talk about genocide. I mean, there's a specific target happening towards a specific group that has a religious affiliation, and that are the Christians in Nigeria. So we hear about genocide in other parts of the world. We don't oftentimes hear a lot about this one, but it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to and certainly pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters in Christ.
The Boko Haram, here's the headline. Boko Haram has continued to orchestrate deadly attacks targeting Christians in Nigeria throughout 2025. Thousands of deaths. I see here they're estimating 7,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria so far. That averages 32 to 35 deaths daily. Imagine 35 Christians just being killed daily for your faith. Boko Haram and their affiliates are responsible for mass killings, abductions, and village raids, especially in northeast Nigeria, which you mentioned. During one attack in August, Boko Haram murdered 5 Christian farmers in Borno State, followed by a night raid on Musa village, where 3 sleeping Christians were killed just for their faith. So their tactics are to target Christians, churches, gatherings. They'll burn those places, they'll kill those who refuse to convert to Islam, and they'll create just a general atmosphere of terror. So this is a major issue, and we need to be in prayer for them and advocating for them.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
There you go. All right, any other news stories before we move on to our next segment?
Nope. Well, I think Noah would like to talk about the Giants. I think
maybe a more light news story.
Who's the quarterback now?
3 pretty heavy news stories right there.
What's happening? Who's on the bench and who's on the field?
Noah just woke up. Did somebody say Giants?
Russell Wilson is now on the bench, but Jackson Dart is now the starter, and he had a successful day yesterday.
Yes.
So,
although the AstroTurf struck again in the Meadowlands.
Yes, there have been many
not the Meadowlands,
season-ending injuries on that turf. That single field.
They got to figure it out over there, man.
It's a big problem. Torn ACLs, ruptured Achilles. It's pretty terrible.
Yeah. And Tim, you had some news too about a tie score.
Oh yeah, the Cowboys Packers vehicle last night over in Jerryland, as the Cowboys fans like to call it, right, Pastor Dave?
I'm not sure they call it that, but yeah.
Jerry World, sorry, not Jerryland. 40-40 tie against the Packers over there. Quite a football game.
So, I mean, how many overtimes do you get before they just call it a tie and quit?
In the NFL, it's 1.
Oh, that's it.
It's 1 10-minute period. I personally, and a lot of people don't like it, which I don't understand. I think the college football overtime is much more entertaining, and there's no ties. So you get the ball on the 25, so you have 2 sets of downs, essentially, to get into the end zone. And you score, and then the next person does it. And it's like a snake draft. So let's say both teams score, then the second team that scores will start with the ball. And then you have to go for 2 each time. And you keep doing this until someone eventually wins.
Gotcha.
Indeed.
The rules are changing. I was at one of the Somerset Patriots games this summer, and they had extra innings, and they just put a guy on second. I don't know how long that's been happening.
It's been around for a little bit.
That's like a way to speed things up a little bit.
I haven't gone to a game recently, but I did notice the pitch clock. That's a new thing. It helps to speed up the game, and apparently it's slowed the game down by about 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's supposed to speed it up, but it actually slowed it down.
I'm sorry, speed it up.
Oh,
Yeah, there you
okay,
go. 30
yeah.
minutes.
30 minutes. That's significant.
30 minutes, 30 minutes less because you got to throw the ball within 15 seconds of getting it rather than sitting up there and staring them down.
Yeah.
Which I thought was part of the nostalgia of baseball, but, I guess we're in a different era. The market demands quicker games.
Maybe they should put a pitch clock on my sermons.
Well, there's a clock, and you just ignore it.
That's true. Don't worry about that.
What is that? Get out of here.
Anyway, point number 5.
Moving on.
There we go. All right. Now we got time for our next sponsor. This episode of Behind the Pulpit is brought to you by the membership class. I'm going to let Pastor Dave tell you all about this next sponsor right now. What's happening with membership class, Pastor Dave?
We're so glad that a lot of you are checking out Millington Baptist Church lately. If you are considering joining our church as a member, this is the class that you'd want to attend, and you need to register for that, and you can do that just going on our website. It's going to be in the second service hour starting on October 12th for those 3 Sundays in a row, and we hope that you'll check it out. This will give you all the information that you need to make a good and informed decision about whether or not you want to become a member of Millington Baptist Church. I'll be there. Pastor Bob will be there. Amy Huber will be there. I'm sure some other leaders will be there as well. So check it out. We'd love to have you. Register today.
Titans of Millington Baptist Church. The membership class loves Behind the Pulpit. So thank you so much for sponsoring.
They are such a supportive sponsor of the show.
All right, it is time to move on to the next segment. The world famous segment, second only to In the News, The Great Book War. So what I want to know now is, do we have some results from our previous week's voting? And
we do have results.
Will you guys be overruling, or what's going on here?
No,
how many votes do we have this week?
We actually had a decent amount of votes.
We did. All right. What did I recommend? I forget what I recommended. What did I recommend? Last week.
Hold on, let me just find the slide thingy here. So we have a. This was the score coming into this past week. Pastor
I was
Dave
0-1, man. It's like the Giants
to the early lead,
and the Jets.
Well, now the Jets are.
Oh, did they win? All right, maybe I'll be like the Jets.
No, the Giants won. The Jets have not, and just like the Jets, Bob is still
tonight though
winless. As a Phoenix of woman will win.
Brianna Harley
week. As the Bob's fans are starting to push back a little bit. This wasn't as bad as last week in terms of a margin.
All right.
This
is like the New Jersey voting right here, but we did swing a little bit to the right on this voting right here.
We did. I'm going to right now on the show implement a little bit of a legislation. We are going to figure out a way to reward
voter suppression, Tim.
No. This is the opposite. We do not suppress voters here. We want you to get out to the polls here for the Behind the Pulpit Book War. So we're going to figure out a way. Yes, vote now and vote early, because we are going to figure out a way at the end of the season to reward those who have voted the most. So if you want to be someone who is worthy of a prize, get on the voting. There was 540 of you who watched last week's episode, and 12 of you voted. Again, a pretty poor ratio.
Well,
not good percentages right there.
Percentage is low.
12 out of 600 people voted for the book.
Yep. So we'll figure that out. So
maybe is this segment still worth it, Tim? That's the question. If only 12 people are voting,
Bob, I think you need to power through. I think you need to endure to the end.
All right. All right, sounds good. Well, I'll make the first recommendation here today. So I recommended this book over the weekend to somebody else who wanted to get into apologetics. They said, I want to do some reading on apologetics. I don't know much about it. Where do I start? And there's so many good books to recommend, but this is a new production from Hendrickson. Timothy Paul Jones down at Southern Seminary edited this and contributed a chapter. It's called Understanding Christian Apologetics: 5 Methods for Defending the Faith. So the reason I recommended this book is it gives you an overview of 5 different apologetic methods. There's the classical approach, the evidential approach, the presuppositional approach, the cultural approach, and the ecclesial approach, which I think is fairly new. Timothy Paul Jones wrote that chapter. And then there's responses from the other people that are advocating the other methods. So it's one of those kind of counterpoint books. But new, well-written. If you want to know about apologetics, right here. And they also give recommended reading at the end of their chapters. So if you want to get started, it's fairly digestible. You can read through this, get a quick overview, and then decide where you want to dive in deeper on those recommendations. Understanding Christian Apologetics. Boom. That's my entry for this week. And over there I see Pastor Dave has a doorstop that he brought with him.
So I'm bringing this today in honor of the fact that Isaiah chapter 7, which was the sermon from yesterday, has a quotation from it used by the Gospel of Matthew. And sometimes it's hard to figure out how the New Testament is using the Old Testament. So it's not always so simple to say here's a prediction and here's a fulfillment. Sometimes there is different ways in which the New Testament uses the Old Testament. In this case, Isaiah chapter 7 has a very complicated use of the Old Testament, and I was greatly helped by looking at Beale and Carson. They have literally cataloged every single time the New Testament quotes the Old Testament and written a commentary about those particular passages to help you understand what is the New Testament doing when it's quoting the Old Testament. So if you need a resource, this is not the kind of book you would want to sit down and like cover to cover read, but it is a book that would be good like on your shelf or maybe just sitting on the counter in your kitchen or I don't know, wherever you do your
you don't want people to read the book you're recommending.
I want people to have it.
It's a resource.
To own it. I want people to have it within reach, to access the wisdom that is here. So there is a section here on Matthew 1 quoting Isaiah 7 that I used, and lots of other stuff. It is a classic academic resource. It's put out by Baker, and it is well done. So this is my book recommendation for this week. Beale and Carson, the commentary of the New Testament use of the Old Testament.
Up next to each other. There we go. Right there.
Yeah.
This is and just turn them side by side. There you go. All right.
We recommend.
We'll see what happens.
You decide.
There is a shorter version of that one I was telling Dave. If you don't want the full one,
go vote.
So there you go. Vote.
Vote right now.
Choices are before you.
Pause the video. Click the link. Vote now.
All right. While you're voting, the next sponsor of our wonderful show today is the Underground Sessions. The Underground Sessions has been a sponsor for many, many years. We've brought them into focus the last couple weeks because the Underground Sessions will be with us this coming Saturday and Sunday, October 4th and 5th, here at Millington Baptist Church. Monique Dussault, Krista Bontrager, the
this weekend
Center for Biblical Unity. And I got to tell you, there is still time to sign up. Sign up right now to let us know that you're coming so that we have enough food and books for you this weekend. If you don't sign up, I can't guarantee there'll be food. I definitely can't guarantee if there will be a book for you. But we do want you to come. You are going to be greatly blessed by Monique and Krista. They were also acquaintances of Voddie Baucham, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about Voddie this weekend posthumously. The underground theme is Answering God's Call to Justice. There also is a leadership workshop on Saturday morning called Walking in Unity on their book about biblical answers to race and racism. And we'll be talking about, is social justice biblical justice? What is God's call for us in the scriptures? That is going to be the theme Sunday night. Going to be a great time. You'll be blessed. We hope to see you there. Thank you for sponsoring our episode today.
The Underground, they love Behind the Pulpit.
Underground.
They do really well.
Get so excited for Behind the Pulpit. They do. All right, speaking of Behind the Pulpit, we've now come to that section of our show called the Sermon Recap. And yesterday, Pastor Dave, look at that good-looking guy right there.
Wow, it looks like the same shirt.
He's wearing the same shirt as yesterday. So
guys caught me.
We caught him on a fresh wash cycle. He went and washed the shirt and then came back today. Moved to the front of the line. But
Sunday
anyway,
morning I only wore it for like 3 hours.
Yeah,
I'm like, I think this needs another day. So I decided.
It's good. It's a good looking shirt, though. You look good in the shirt.
Yeah. Appreciate you embarrassing me in front of the whole World Wide Web with this.
Well, we'll see how many views this episode gets. I know we're picking up steam. Anyway, so we talked about Isaiah chapter 7. We're moving along. And you talked a little bit about trust. Where are you placing your trust? So why don't you give us the overview of your message, and then we'll dive into a couple of your points that don't involve chapter 7, verse 20.
Isaiah chapter 7 is when Isaiah moves forward to his, his interaction with a king named Ahaz, and so we are moving forward chronologically, and it's a story about a king who was facing a military crisis and about to be attacked and about to be put under siege. And Isaiah the prophet is sent by God to tell him to stand firm in his faith and to trust Yahweh. And the king decides not to do that. He takes matters into his own hands. He comes up with his own savior. He pursues his own Lord somewhere else besides Yahweh, pays off the king of Assyria to come take care of his enemies, and spiritually compromises in the process, ends up bringing false worship into God's territory, brings an altar to a foreign god, greatly displeasing to the Lord. The country that he ends up trusting, the king of Assyria, turns on him, starts ravaging through the land of Judah, and wreaks havoc even in his own backyard. And in the midst of all of this disobedience, God makes a promise and sends a sign that the virgin will be with child and give birth to a son, and you will call his name Immanuel. So even in our failure, God still pursues his people and still makes promises to preserve his people and be with us even in the dark times. And so that's the kind of the heart and soul of Isaiah 7, and the theme there is, where will you place your trust in a time of crisis, when it really comes at you, when life gets difficult? Will you be willing to hold on to God and trust him and him alone instead of placing your trust here or there or everywhere? So that's the gist of Isaiah 7.
And that was a wonderful overview of the chapter, Pastor Dave. You did a good job of pulling out some really good points. You helped us think about what our Assyria is. You helped us think about who it is that we're making alliances with in our lives. So I did notice on the back of your chart that you used a chart that I sent you, that I saw on social media, that I thought was pretty helpful, helping us understand a bit of the historical background. You also spent a little bit of your sermon talking about what was actually happening, because if we didn't know what was going on in 2 Kings 16, we wouldn't really know what chapter 7 was about. So why don't you give us a quick overview of that and how this falls within the history here?
Isaiah 7 doesn't really give that much detail about what Ahaz is doing, so you have to go back and read 2 Kings 16. That's actually our assigned reading for this week, and you can read the narrative of what's going on. And Ahaz compromises with the emperor of Assyria, asks for his help, asks him to rescue him. The word rescue is the word yasha, where we get our word for salvation. He asks the king to save him, and then he builds this altar in memory of the king and in honor of his gods. And this altar becomes a symbol of the king's compromise. This altar becomes a symbol of who saved them, and the person who saved them in this case was the king of Assyria. And so it's a very dark passage. It's a dark time in Israel's history. In many ways, Ahaz is going to be set up in contrast with his son Hezekiah, who is put in a very similar test of faith later on in the book of Isaiah, chapters 36, 37, 38, 39. And Hezekiah actually passes the test of faith and does much better than his dad in that case. But if you didn't know what was going on in 2 Kings 16, you would have a hard time figuring out what's going on in Isaiah 7. So it's an essential background reading for that.
Well, I got a couple questions, but before I do that, is there anything that you didn't get to put in the sermon that you think is important that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I'll just mention that Ahaz has a son named Hezekiah, and you may be familiar.
Important.
He is very important. He actually digs a very famous tunnel into Jerusalem to provide water into the city in case they do get sieged in the future. Perhaps he learned a lesson from his father's failings there as a result of that. And I did want to just go through a couple different interpretive options of Isaiah 7:14 and why I landed the place that I landed. But I don't know if that was one of your questions or if you just want me to explain
my
that.
question was, I just want to give you a chance to talk about things you didn't get to talk about yesterday.
Yeah.
And then we'll see if we have enough time for you to answer my questions.
Okay. So Isaiah 7:14, most people think of that as just like a straight up prediction prophecy of the virgin birth of Jesus. And of course it is. But there is a far fulfillment and a near fulfillment. A lot of times prophecies have dual fulfillments. Some of them have more than two fulfillments. In this case, there's at least two, and you have to figure out what is the near fulfillment, and there's some interpretive decisions that have to be made there. So there's a lot of sons in the book of Isaiah. There's three major camps in terms of who this son could be. So option number one is it's actually the son of Ahaz, the son named Hezekiah, the son that would come and be the next king in the line of Judah, and that son would be born and be a sign that God is still going to preserve his promise to King David. The stump will have a shoot that comes out of it, and of course we do learn a lot about the coming king in the book of Isaiah, but I don't think that that's a good interpretation because Hezekiah so this whole story takes place around 735 BC. Hezekiah was already born. Hezekiah was already born in like 741 BC. So the chronology doesn't work there with that interpretation, so I don't really favor that view. A second view that I liked, but I didn't ultimately land there, was that the virgin that was going to give birth to a son is actually the nation of Israel, as she's personified as a woman. Later on in the book of Isaiah, she's called the daughter Zion, and she gives birth to a son, meaning Israel will continue to exist. They will have children. Another generation will come, and they will not be destroyed by those who take them into exile. So that's a very attractive interpretation. So Zion is depicted as a wife in Isaiah 54 and Isaiah 62. She's called a bride in Isaiah 61 who will miraculously have an abundance of children. So it does in many ways fit the context of the book of Isaiah, but ultimately I didn't really go there. I went with Isaiah chapter 8, where the word Immanuel is actually used two more times of Isaiah's son, Maher-Halal-Hashbaz, who has a name that means quick to plunder, quick to spoil. And his name is a prophecy that the nations that they're so afraid of will quickly be plundered and quickly be destroyed. And so that's the sign that God gives to that generation. God will be with them. He'll preserve them. And then, of course, later, we see 725 years later, when Israel, again, is in a dark predicament, God sends his ultimate son, born of a virgin, the Messiah, Jesus, who is God with us. So those are some interpretive options that you have to decide. Again, I think if you really want to wrestle with this stuff, there's a lot more information in this commentary about the use of the Old Testament and the New. This will help you through issues like that to kind of sort through the options.
Very good. That was super helpful. So my question, Pastor Dave, more applicationally, is that you talked a little bit about this idea of faith or fear and where we run when times get tough. So in terms of the king of Assyria, Israel was getting attacked from a bunch of sides, and rather than trusting in their God, Yahweh God, they chose to go to the big guy on the block, the king of Assyria, and say, hey, I need a little bit of help here. And he flattered him with language. He chose to, the king of Judah chose to get in bed, so to speak, with the Assyrians. What I was thinking about is where does that happen in our lives, in my life? Where do I, rather than running to God in prayer and asking for his power and his help and believing that he can intervene, why is it that we don't do that? Why do we run to things of this world that we think are going to help us instead of to God? What are the alliances that we're making?
It's hard to have faith in the midst of a crisis. It's scary. Ahaz was shook, the text says, and it's very tempting to try to figure things out ourselves when we're scared instead of first going to God. I gave a couple examples of this in the sermon. You have a health crisis, and so you run to Google before you go to Jesus in prayer.
How many people check out Dr. Google nowadays?
I mean, it's like
they get even more shook.
It actually does.
Every time you go read it, you're dying. So.
Right. Or, you're facing some kind of financial struggle and you start looking for maybe a credit line or going into debt rather than praying that God would provide. Or, sometimes in a cultural crisis, people look to politics before they look to trusting God to help us in our situation. There's a lot of different ways that we can make plans without God, because when we get shook, it can really throw our faith out of whack. I told the story about Felicity. So she had this car accident in fall of 2023, October 2023. She was driving to school one morning and lost control of the car. She ended up ramming into a telephone pole. And then I was on my way to work and the police called and said, are you her dad? I'm like, yeah. So she said, my hip hurts. And we just didn't know what was wrong with her. So they couldn't get her out of the car. They had to use the thing to get her out of the car, rushed her to the ER, Grandview in Bucks County. And I'm like driving as fast as I can. I called Julie. I have to pick her up on the way home. Actually, I swung by the neighborhood and Julie had already left our house. She started walking just to save me like 30 seconds from picking her up at the house. And so I'm like, okay, get in. So we're driving, we're speeding, we're praying the whole way. And those kind of times of crisis, we have to remember to call on the name of the Lord, the name that is above every name. He hears us and he invites us to trust in him. That's what the prophet is encouraging Ahaz to do. He's having a hard time doing that, and it's frustrating to the prophet Isaiah that the king's acting like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a temptation that they faced back then, but I think it's a temptation we face today. Maybe we want to cut corners legally instead of follow every little jot and tittle of the law. Maybe we want to somehow come up with a scheme or a plan that's maybe unethical. And like my mentor used to say, sometimes I like to help God out a little bit, to come up with a way to, make this less scary. So a lot of different ways that can apply.
Good. It's certainly very applicable. I mean, I'm sure as you're listening, you can think about different times where this has been true in your life. And we've run to our proverbial king of Assyria. And maybe they even help us out, but then things can change down the road, and we become indebted to that king, and that king may turn on us if we're not careful.
Yeah, one of the things I think strategically, textually, we have to remember is chapter 6 is before chapter 7 for a reason. So Isaiah has this exalted picture of the sovereign God of the universe on the throne, and it helps us to remember that he really does have this whole thing in control, and we have to read the book of Isaiah through that lens. The one who is sovereign is also holy, and he's at the center, and we can trust that he's occupying that throne.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about with Isaiah 6 is that it was a hinge chapter, resolving the tension that was happening in the first 5 chapters. How in the world can God come in and do something to this era of judgments and Israel turning away? And then you have this beautiful picture of God and his holiness in chapter 6. And then immediately you get the contrast in chapter 7, where the king of Judah should know who this God is, and yet he's turning away from him and going to suffer the consequences as we continue to go on.
And the other thing about chapter 6 is at the very end, though there's destruction prophesied, there's this stump that's smoldering.
The stump, man.
And we know that there's a holy seed inside of the stump. There's a promise that's made that God is not only on his throne, but he's also made a promise to take care of his people. And so that's something that we can count on as well. And sometimes that's hard to do, but Isaiah is giving us hints that our God is worth trusting, and his word is trustworthy.
I think maybe the title of this episode should be Look to the Stump. Look to the stump, Pastor Dave.
We will continue to talk about this
stump. On the stump.
We didn't talk about chapter 5, but chapter 5 is this vineyard. Israel is likened to a vineyard, and it's like a judgment cycle. And so the reason why the vineyard is going to be judged is because of some of the behaviors we see in chapter 7, because the leaders are acting like this. This is why God ultimately has to chop the tree of Israel down, so to speak, and start over with this holy seed, this branch that comes out of the stump.
Amen. Yeah. There you go. Well, this week we're going to be jumping into chapter 9, so I'll do my best to give an overview of chapter 8, but we're going to be specifically focusing on verses 6 and 7, and the very famous verses that are read at Christmas. That there is going to be one who comes, who is called Wonderful God, Mighty Counselor, Prince of Peace, and the government is going to rest on his shoulders, and he's going to be the one who brings justice and righteousness. And so we're going to focus on that verse, particularly because the Underground Sessions is this week. We're talking about God's call to justice, and so that'll be another theme in the sermon this week. But I'll do my best to give the overview of chapter 8 and 9, particularly 9, as we continue our journey through Isaiah. So that'll be this upcoming week.
Hope you're enjoying this study. Don't forget to send in your questions. We are still taking questions, right, Tim? If people have something they want to ask us clarity on, we can do that.
If you are in person on Sunday mornings, there's a graphic that comes up in the rotator.
We need to encourage folks more to do that.
I actually got an email from our favorite question asker.
Oh, okay.
Mr. John Rickershauser. It's not a question, but he was noting on the slide there on the graphic that
which one?
The one in the rotator graphic, that you guys are in the different seats in the graphic that you are.
Ah.
So in the news,
I did tell you we do need to get a new graphic, Tim.
Oh.
Even in the lobby, we got the Behind the Pulpit involved me and Rachel is an infrequent guest here, although maybe we should get her back one of these weeks.
Yeah, that was when Dave was on his sabbatical.
Dave was on sabbatical.
It switched up.
My rotating guest that came in.
Since that graphic out there, I don't know if it's changed, but the one on the rotator has since changed. So.
Good. Well, maybe a new one of us.
Yeah, we'll work on something.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
good.
Observant, John. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I saw him taking the picture.
John.
I saw him taking the picture,
Man.
and I thought that he was asking a question. And turns out he was just taking.
Oh, he
a picture
took a picture and sent it to you.
Yeah, it's
John. He's giving you the business right there, Tim. All right. So our final sponsor of today's episode is the Leadership Workshop. Walking in Unity, that's happening this coming Saturday morning. I keep getting dinged saying people are signing up for it, and there's still spots, so please go and sign up. Here's the thing about this one. We are giving you breakfast. You will get breakfast, and you will get a book. Free breakfast, free book, and you're going to get an amazing seminar from Monique and Krista on how to walk in unity as it relates to biblical answers to racism and race. So this is going to be happening this coming Saturday. Walking in Unity loves Behind the Pulpit, and we are super excited to have Monique and Krista and the entire Walking in Unity family with us this coming Saturday morning. So please go and sign up right now. That QR code is just begging you to scan it and sign up for this event so that we have the appropriate amount of food and books for when you come.
Scan me.
I'm always a little confused with the QR codes here. So let's say if I'm watching this on my device.
QR code maker over here with Noah.
Well, if you're watching
feedback.
or listening to
QR
this
code
on
feedback.
your device, so let's say you are watching the pod on your phone, or you are listening on one of the many podcast platforms that you can consume this show on, you could
such as where?
Spotify, Amazon Prime Podcasts.
Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube.
Apple
right
Podcasts, Vlodcast. There's if you listen to podcasts anywhere, it's on there. Hello. But yeah, just go down to the show notes. Everything's there. You can find trunk or treat information. You can find Underground Sessions information. You can find the link to vote for the book war. There's many things in there.
I understand.
Okay. Well, very good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tim. We'll hope to see you Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll be back next Monday, here on Behind the Pulpit to recap everything that happened during the Underground and Walking Unity weekend. All right, we've come to the end. It's time to sprint. Now that we're out of breath.
We're not going to have Kristen and Monique here Monday, are we? No.
No, they're... Well, unless we can convince them. I'm not sure what time they're leaving on Monday or Sunday, so we can talk with them, but yeah. That would be kind of cool, though, if we could do that. We'll see what they say.
Just asking.
I'm not hopeful. I did not sign them up.
Yeah.
So this would have to be you using your persuader gift.
It would have to be out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, their contract says they shall make no other appearances, but maybe you can persuade them. So we'll see.
All right.
All right, sprint. I'm out of breath. What do we got?
All right.
Let me drink some water over here. There it is, the Theology Sprint.
Yes.
Angry Dave is back.
He takes theology very seriously.
First of all, go back to that picture. you're wearing my shirt, and I'm wearing an auto mechanic shirt from Jiffy Lube. I have a jumpsuit on, and I'm working in the pit.
He just came from changing the
I'm
oil
taking
in
the
his...
filters off downstairs. That's what my job is. And I got a microphone down there. And I'm like, anybody got any theology questions?
What am I doing with my hands? This ChatGPT came out. Am I always ever doing that with my hands?
You are dancing.
ChatGPT must have done some extended research and learned about your history in theater.
I do.
Dave's like, let me answer your question. And Bob's like, that's so good, I want to dance. Dave's answer is so good, I want to dance.
I do like that ChatGPT gave me more hair, though, and darker hair. It took away my gray and gave me a full head of hair there. So I'll take that.
Me and my overalls.
I believe this
All
was
right.
they took this from the picture of you on our website where you're wearing. I believe it's the Southern Seminary quarter zip.
Oh, maybe. There you go. But there's no Southern Seminary logo on there, so it looks like
Copyright.
looks like a mechanic's shirt.
Oh yeah, we need to fix that.
The grease monkey is ready.
Yeah,
All right. It is time for our Theology Sprint for this week.
Thank you, Noah.
And so this week's question is there an age of accountability for salvation?
Oh, my goodness.
Ooh, good question.
Did you ask this because Isaiah 7 talks about it?
No.
No?
No.
No,
Okay.
It was just the Spirit was moving over there.
All right. This was a big part of my reading.
So something you didn't bring up. How come you didn't bring
Crazy how
this
this
up in the
works.
sermon discussion?
I
gosh.
forgot.
Clearly, the Holy Spirit wanted you to talk about this.
I
So
forgot.
let's talk about it right now.
Wow. Okay.
Dave's he's ready to do a mid sprint right here.
All right, so everyone go to the bathroom, go cover your feet, and we're gonna have a few more minutes of this episode here.
So
the feet.
Isaiah 7, verse 15, actually mentions this concept of this kid will come and before he knows the evil or the good. And then it mentions that again, I think, in verse 17. And there's this sort of technical terminology about there's some time in our lives when we will then be able to know the evil and the good. And so some people from that verse, and there's some other verses like in the Old Testament, such as the children of the Exodus generation who get to grow up and they're not disciplined or they're not destroyed like their parents. So for some reason, God gives the little ones a chance there. And so from that, sometimes people surmise that maybe there's this thing called like an age of accountability. Maybe there's a certain age. Some people say it's like 12, where at that point, God will hold people responsible. I'm not too sure the Bible's crystal clear on that. I don't hate the conversation, but I don't think the Bible is as clear as I would like it to be on that. But I did study a lot about that this week, and I felt like I came up with no firm answer on that. I don't know, Bob, if you've ever taken a gander at this concept of like, is there an age of accountability? Do you have an opinion?
I don't have an opinion.
Okay.
I need to think about it more, although I'm certainly familiar with the concept, but I hadn't taken a firm position on it. And it does, I think to some extent, make sense, but I need to dig in a bit more.
Well, Noah, that was not the best sprint in the world, but
So
can we bring back the sprint next week with the same question with a better answer?
Was that a torn ACL sprint?
Yeah,
it was.
definitely.
It was not the best sprint. I don't know that we kind of crawled across the finish line.
It might have been.
Do you want a chip shot for this week? We'll come back to it next week.
Yes.
All
Let's
right.
do some study this week.
Here's a
It's
chip
an
shot.
important question. We need to give a good answer to it.
Here's a chip shot for this week. What is the difference between biblical theology and systematic theology?
Oh my goodness. You want to answer it, or you want me to do it?
You go ahead.
Systematic theology looks at the entire Bible and chooses to systemize what the Bible says about a particular doctrine. So if we're talking about soteriology, that's the doctrine of salvation, systematic theology will look at the entire Bible and put it into a system. Biblical theology tends to focus on what the particular authors say about a topic within their writings. So you may have a Johannine take on something. You may have a Pauline take on something. Biblical theology also tends to focus a little bit more on the general storyline of the Bible and how we get from the beginning to the end. What would you add to that, or correct?
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think that's how I would have answered it too.
Is that long enough for a sprint? Do I need to keep going?
That is long enough for a sprint.
All right, there you go.
Yep.
Do you have like a whole list of sprint options just like on deck in case we fumble like that? Or
I've got a menu over here.
a menu.
Varying difficulties.
Some a la carte sprints.
Okay. There you go.
We'll have to have an episode of just episode to sprint. The Tour de Sprint.
Tour de Sprint, yeah. We'll have 30 stages, and
We'll have 30 sprints in one episode.
All right, we're going to dig into that age of accountability question and come back next week, so we're prepared. But thank you so much for joining us for Behind the Pulpit this week. Go and sign up for Underground Walking in Unity. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week. Isaiah 9, Pastor Dave's going to be in the driver's seat. Maybe wearing a different shirt. We'll see. We'll see you next week.
Throwing shade. See you guys.